I was about 3 years old at the time. My brother was 5. Our parents were going through a divorce, so my grandparents offered to look after me and my brother, until the divorce was final so that we weren't caught up in the mess. My grandparents' anniversary was coming up, so my grandmother thought it'd help her mother take her mind off things to spend some time with us so she could relax. She and my grandfather went out for the evening and left me and my brother home with her mother for the night. Things seemed to be going good at first, nothing out of the ordinary. It was starting to get a bit late and my brother and I were sitting on the living room floor watching television. After a while, she asked if we heard anything, and I remember we both looked at her and she had this worried look on her face. She muted the television for a moment to listen and we started hearing noises coming from our basement. It was the sound of our bathroom door in our basement swinging open and closed again. It sounded like someone had just walked into the bathroom and slammed the door, but that couldn't be possible seeing as how me, my older brother and our mom were the only ones in the house of the time. Mom dismissed it up first, reasoning that the house was just old and old houses usually make strange noises. So we went back to watching television again for a while. After about an hour or so had passed, it was around 8 o'clock, almost time for my brother and I to go to bed. Mom muted the television again and told us to be quiet. We listened for a minute and didn't hear anything at first. Then after a while we began to hear the sound of pounding coming from the basement just under the living room floor. It was soft at first, but as it went on it got louder and louder. The sound encircled the living room almost like a shark circling in on its prey. It got closer to where my brother and I were sitting as it circled around us, growing louder and louder, until it finally sounded like someone was banging on the living room floor under us with their fists, trying to break through the floorboards. My brother jumped up onto the couch and huddled ourselves closer on Mom, who was curled up on the couch. It was just as scared as we were. The sounds of the pounding slowly subsided. Mom frantically dialed the restaurant where my grandfather said he and her grandmother would be. After a while, my grandfather picked up and asked what was wrong. Mom told him what we were hearing. My grandfather is still a firm skeptic. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He told her it was probably just the pipes rattling and that she was just under a lot of stress from the divorce. In her imagination was running away from her. He then told her to be sure to have us in bed by 9 o'clock and he would see us in the morning. And he hung up. A few minutes went by and we were still huddled together on the couch. Mom did her best to stay calm and hold yourself together, from me and my brother saying that Granddad was probably just right. It was an old house after all. So we just went back to watching television, trying to take our minds off of the situation before we had to go to bed. I'm not exactly sure what happened next, but a strong feeling of fear came over my mom as she turned off the television. I could see it in her eyes as my brother and I both looked back at her. We sat there in silence for only a moment. The air was dead quiet. Then the banging started up again, louder than ever. It sounded like someone was frantically trying to break through the floor in a fit of rage. Mom picked up the phone and dialed the restaurant again, but the phone wasn't working. She picked us up holes in the floor and pushed us into the main hall and ran to the kitchen to get us our coats from the chair at the end of the table next to the basement door. Suddenly me and my brother both heard what sounded like a set of heavy combat boots stomping up from the basement stairs and a hair-raising slam against the basement door. It sounded like whoever or whatever was down there wanted to get out. We then heard a tumbling noise as if someone had thrown a chair down the basement stairs. Mom didn't waste a second in getting us the hell out of the front door. She practically threw us outside and we spent the rest of the evening in her car until her grandparents returned home. Our grandmother's car finally pulled into the lot at the top of our street, and my grandfather saw that we were sitting in her mom's car, and he got angry. He demanded to know why we weren't in bed before they returned home. Mom told them everything. You could just tell by the way she spoke that she was shaken. My brother and I confirmed everything she said, but her grandfather had none of it. He went up to the locked room on the second floor and grabbed a pistol from the gun cabinet and demanded my mom follow him to the basement so that he could show her that there was absolutely no one else in the house, but she refused to follow him into the basement. Of course, after checking everything over, nothing was found to be broken, so there couldn't have been anyone else in the house. Our grandmother didn't need convincing. She had always believed in ghosts. She had stories of her own encounters with the paranormal, but either way, Mom never spent another night in her grandparents' house alone after that. To this day, She refuses to stay after dark. My brother is 30 now and I'm 28. Our grandmother has since passed away and our grandfather's health hasn't been what it should be, so I stay with him and I look after him to this day. I don't know who or what was in her basement that night. I hope I never find out, but every time my grandfather asked me to go down in the basement to get something for him, I always get the feeling that there's someone watching me down there. And every time I go down there, the bathroom door on the far side of the basement is always open. No matter how many times I close it, every time I go down there, that goddamn door's always open. A little update on this story: I've looked into the history of my grandfather's house where this event took place. As it turns out, several of the previous owners had died on the property. One person had a heart attack and died in his sleep in one of the bedrooms on the second floor. A second person had died of a blood clot in her brain in her living room, and the third, being the original owner of the house when it was first built in 1911, had fallen down the basement stairs and broke his neck against the wall of the foundation. Could this have been him in our basement?